Welcome back. Thanks for joining us again. We're now going to tackle a point of view on a possible operational framework as a guide to going through the implementation process of leveraging API marketplaces to execute on innovation. It may differ slightly from context to context, but the underlying principle should be the same as a blueprint with a few tweaks to accommodate material nuances in each context. A quick recap of a blueprint of the types of API marketplaces, which we will reference in detail a bit later in this section. As well as a recap of the strategic model summary we developed in Section 3. As usual, we start off with laying down the context through a case study to make the concepts we're going to unpack more real so as to make it much more easier to implement after going through the material. So let's refer back to the strategic model summary and pick the motivation that underpins the context on which we're going to unpack the operational framework. We choose problem solving in this case. So let's say there's a group of business entities that want to vertically integrate the hospitality customer value chain to achieve a few key strategic imperatives such as scaling, cross and upselling, as well as repositioning of service lines that have been disrupted and are no longer relevant in the market. This might be a number of internal entities within a group company being merged or a big pocket player going on an acquisition spree. Merging the value chain presents a challenge that the various customer bases across the entities on the value chain have to be merged. A not-so-smart guy is thinking, oh my word, this means painful system and platform integration. The smart guy, on the other hand, is thinking data, data, data. You leave the systems to do what they were originally designed to do, and you just worry about getting the data. Data, data, data. The lens of the problem we're going to attempt to solve in this case study is the integration of the multiple loyalty programs across the customer value chain into one single program that rewards the customer in a meaningful way for being loyal to a number of brands for what to them is essentially one experience. We will unpack this hospitality experience value chain shortly. So, the first stage in the value chain is making various bookings to fulfill the experience from A to Z. This might involve buying an air ticket, a hotel room, a rental car, and so forth. In this case study, the business entity in question is a travel agency providing a personalized service to curate bookings across the value chain, using a combination of directly communicating with fulfillment partners, as well as the use of hospitality digital aggregation platforms to curate the elements required. The second stage is the actual airline service for the customer to get to and from their desired destination. The car service the customer uses to get a rental car for use at their desired destination. And lastly, the hotel where the customer is going to stay at their desired destination. Right, Now getting into the detail around the actual loyalty programs across the value chain. The travel agent's idea of loyalty rewards is to give customers discount coupons. They have a simple customer records database that only serves to record transactions. The record can be pulled up by surname though, when customers want to redeem coupons earned from past bookings. The business is being heavily disrupted by digital platforms and is currently being sustained by a small pool of high-value customers who still prefer a personal touch. That is, someone to call and communicate with when problems arise or trips need to be modified, etc. The airline's loyalty program is a bit more sophisticated. They have a points accumulation algorithm already built into the booking system that calculates points earned and adds them to an available balance. While the airline system doesn't necessarily have a 360-degree customer profile from which to perform personalization, they at least use the record of customer trips to predict potential future spend. They then use this to decide how to allocate customer value options such as seat upgrades to encourage the customer to spend with them in future. The car rental business has two different customer profile databases, the bookings database and the loyalty points database. The two are separate and unconnected. The hotel system is similar to that of the airline and works across all of the hotel's locations and affiliated partner locations. The predictive element, however, is limited to checking customer-frequented locations for regular customers and sending them discount offers for future stays at the same location. The following details the points accumulation methods for each of the loyalty programs. As well as the manner in which loyalty points are converted into rewards for each program. Okay, so now let's get into how the problem is solved in the case study. The idea is to integrate all these loyalty programs into one, where one customer profile moves from partner to another in the fulfillment of the customer's traveling needs as a 360-degree experience. The two sub-elements of the customer profile that need to be considered in this merging process are the types of customers as well as the tiers in which the customer belongs, because essentially it would have to be decided whether the integration happens at service level or points level. What this means is that does the merging of the customer involve the merging of all customer databases and customer types and tiers redefined into one model? Or the various models stay the same and it's just a matter of reconciling the various databases, defining a standardized points accumulation and rewards method for each entity, and then store the consolidated view on a centrally accessible database. The key implementation consideration here is what fields does the 360-degree customer view need to have to capture information critical for each business entity to fulfill their service obligation to the customer in a manner that enhances customer experience. The next objective is that, in order to achieve the objective of delivering a 360-degree seamless traveling experience for the customer in a way that maximizes value for each business entity, booking needs need to be centralized in a way that directly addresses the needs of every customer type and tier across the various service lines. The elements that need to be considered in achieving this objective are listed here. As well as the implementation considerations. Admittedly, this is not a small feat. The third objective is to offer the customer the possibility to self-curate their own trips. Packaging can be very effective in a customer acquisition process, especially where large savings are involved. However, you want to offer the customer the chance to choose. Some customers prefer to rough it on the flight and direct those savings to a 5-star experience at their destination. They know best how to accommodate their own nuances. Some of the top-of-mind input considerations are listed here. What it really boils down to is to actually getting the customer to self-personalize in a way that ultimately addresses their needs at the cost they are comfortable at. They will have to make concessions themselves, which make for a much more pleasant customer and service provider relationship. There will, however, have to be some level of auto-personalization to guide the customer to the combination of services that might be more applicable to their tastes and preferences to make the process faster and easier. The next objective, which is essentially central to the whole exercise, is to centralize and automate loyalty rewards across the entire value chain in a way that maximizes customer retention probability for each service provider. There are a number of elements to consider in this process. The top-of-mind ones are listed here. Essentially, the outcome here needs to be a loyalty rewards model that functions across the partners involved in fulfilling the service value chain for the customer. If you've done our revenue assurance series, you would have an idea of how to go about building such a model. We encourage you to visit that series should you be interested in learning more about modeling loyalty programs. But this is not essential in unpacking what we're discussing now in this series. So let's carry on. Lastly, we deal with enablement. A handful of high-value travel agent customers are relatively easier to manage manually for bookings and rewards. However, when you start to consider potentially millions of trip bookings, cancellations, modifications, etc. that happen on an airline on an annual basis, you get an appreciation of why digital enablement is critical. Three key elements come top of mind, the most important being the data. There are systems that are designed to manage certain business and customer processes in the hospitality business. You don't want to interfere with that or reinvent the wheel. It's much more easier to consider what data you need to perform certain enablement activities, getting it and leaving those systems alone to carry on doing what they do best. Integration doesn't have to mean actual integration of systems. That was downright stupid in 2017, let alone now in 2021. It's about integration of activities and processes. You only need data for this. Figure out how to build an effective data ecosystem with accuracy as a fundamental underlying principle, and you're good to go.